Hey y'all, Florida boy here. Okay, got a quick project. I'm trying to build an adapter here where I can pressure test the float pods that's on my aluminum skiff. A float pod is basically an aluminum pod that's welded to the back of the transom on the hull. And I'll post up a couple pictures and a link so y'all can get a better idea of what it is. But it serves a couple purposes. The main purpose is just to support the weight of a heavy transom or stern heavy boat. I have a 115 4-stroke Yamaha on the back of this skiff I built, and it is quite heavy. I believe it's 502 pounds with a 20 shaft, so it's quite a bit of weight. But I've had the pods on since I built the boat, and it performs real well. They're definitely worth their weight in gold. But recently I've welded some brackets to them for access to be able to install some trim tabs on the boat. So all that welding in those pods, I've got to pressure test the pods and put soapy water on the welds and make sure I don't have any leaks. Worst case scenario, I've got a leak in these pods and they fill up with water, and that's going to be a bad deal. It's going to be a bad situation right there. So before I continue with the build or the project of putting the trim tabs on there, I need to pressure test these float pods and make sure that there's no leaks around the weld. So basically, here's the plug, and I'd show you the float pod right now, but it's raining pretty hard outside, so I'll show you all that in a bit. But anyway, this is the plug. It's 1/2 inch. It's pipe thread, and it screws into the back of the pod. So what I'm trying to do is I've got a brass plug here, and I'm basically going to drill it out and going to put a tire valve through it, and then I'll pressurize it with just a bicycle pump. You don't want to put a lot of pressure in it. Just pound and a half is plenty, and then you just hit it with some soapy water and make sure it's not leaking. This is going to be kind of a hit and miss thing. It's going to be hit and miss because, first of all, this is brass, and since the valve is going to be sitting in the center of here, and I'll kind of show you the valve right here. This actually will be flush with the back of this after I drill the center out, but it's going to be hard to try to grab these threads with something when I screw it into the float pod without screwing up the threads, because, like I said, they are brass, and brass is a very soft metal, as you probably know. So I'll have to get a little creative with that. I have a few ideas, but first things first, the first problem I see is it's going to be real close to be able to screw this nut on the top once I've got it drilled out and pushed through the center of this brass fitting. The second thing is I cannot use the rubber seal that they had on it because it's just too thick, and definitely will not allow enough of the valve sticking out of the brass plug and able to get that nut on this valve stem. So I'm going to put a little bit of sealer around here and let it set up real good. I just don't want it leaking out there, and that'll kind of defeat the purpose. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and mic this and see what the thickness is and start drilling the center so I can make sure that it fits in there just right. And let's play with this and see if we can't get this thing installed. Okay, I've got this thing in the caliper here, and it looks to be just at the widest part a tab over 5/8 of an inch. So we'll make sure we get the right drill bit. So I need to just try to have it close as fit as possible. And so we're going to start by center drilling it, obviously with a very small bit at first, and then use little increments to get bigger until we get the desired size. So let's start doing that, and I'll keep our fingers crossed on this one. All right, be back with y'all in just a bit. Okay, I don't know if y'all can see that or not, but I basically have a piece of cardboard wrapped around here and holding it with a pair of pliers while I drill it out, so I don't mess these threads up. And we've got it center drilled. It looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Now we're just going to keep going up with very small increments till we reach the desired opening, and we'll see what happens. Hey y'all, okay, this is the final product. It came out real good. I'm happy with it. I did a couple of things to it in addition to assembling it in 5200 at the bottom of it. One was I wrapped it in Teflon tape, and number two is I boogered up these threads on the top, and I intentionally did that, and the reason that I did that was because I need a positive stop when it screws into the pod. And let me give you an example of that. Here's the original plug, and y'all can see right there it has that thick O-ring on there, and it has this big shoulder on it, and that is the positive stop when it screws into the pod. Now this brass fitting, as you can see, doesn't have any shoulder, it doesn't have any stop. So I needed to kind of come up with a way that I could make this fit well, but also have a stop. And by boogering up those threads, that's exactly what it'll do. It'll screw in with all the good threads until it reaches those threads that are boogered up, and that will be my stop. So I'm real happy with it. I think it's going to work out fine. This is something that I will not use just one time. I'm going to keep this, and while I do my biannual inspections and services on the boat, I'll continue to use this to check the pods and make sure they don't have any leaks. All the welds are holding up good. So, all right, let's go play around with that and see if this thing works or not. Hey y'all, Florida Boy back with you. Okay, so here we are doing the pressure test right now, and you can see a little tiny bit of seepage around the plug in the pod, which is actually a good thing, because it tells me there's enough positive pressure in the pod to indicate a leak if it is in fact leaking. And you know, I don't trust this gauge. It is a bicycle pump. The last thing I want to do is overpressurize this thing and have it blow up. So the gauge isn't really indicating anything at all. But I know there's positive pressure in the pod, because, like I said, there is. You can see some bubbles forming just underneath the plug where the Teflon tape is. So that should be enough if it's leaking there to show any leaks anywhere else, if it is in fact has any leaks anywhere else. So we're going to soap this thing up right now on all the rest of the seams and see if we can see anything. Hopefully not. The plug itself looks good. I don't see any leaks around there. I did 5200 that plug up real good, and I don't anticipate any problems there, but I'm going to go ahead and soap the rest of this down and make sure we don't have any leaks on this side. Okay, I soaked this thing down pretty good, and I didn't see anything at all. I feel pretty confident in the welds, although they're not the prettiest welds in the world. You know, I have not been welding aluminum for a long time. It's quite an art, and it takes a while. I'm not really going for style points here as much as I am functionality. I just got to make sure this thing doesn't leak. But I wanted to point out to you for anybody who is pressure testing anything with soapy water, if you've got a leak, that's what it's going to look like. It's just going to sit there and build those bubbles, and you can sit there and watch that. So I know it is leaking out of that plug, that fitting, and like I said, which is a good thing, because it gives you a comparison of what to look for if you do have any other pinholes. I soaped all the welds, every seam on here, and do not see any leaks. So again, I feel real confident that this pod is sealed up tight and it's good to go. We're going to go ahead and do the other side, so I'll be back with you in just a bit. Okay, same deal here. I hope y'all can see that. I think you will. You can see how that thing's just bubbling just around those threads on that fitting, which, like I said, is good, because I know it has positive pressure. I'm probably repeating myself, but I know it has enough positive pressure in the pod to indicate a leak if we have any leaks along the other seam. So in fact, when I took the other one off, unscrewed it, I got a pretty good puff of air coming out of that thing. So I know that it was charged good, even though the bicycle pump isn't really indicating any pressure on the gauge. But said the worst thing you can do is overinflate this thing and have a pod blow up. That'd be a bad deal. You know, good chance you'd get hurt, not to mention, you know, screw the boat up pretty good. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and do this one. The other one's good, and I'm sure this one's gonna be the same. We'll soap down these welds, and hopefully everything's good, and we'll get back with y'all in just a bit. Hey y'all, okay, that went real well. I'm 99% sure, if not 100% sure, that there's no voids or pinholes in the well, so I feel comfortable with moving forward with the trim tab installation. Just a couple quick things I did want to mention about the pods themselves. I got them from Beaver Tails, I believe I mentioned earlier, but they do not come with the Steel Flex epoxy on them. I had to coat them with Steel Flex epoxy. I am a big fan of Steel Flex. I used it on other applications. I actually have Steel Flex on the hull of this boat, so it's a good product that I would highly recommend. And I also like the Beaver Tail pods. I think you know, they're good. They've been real good for my application. There's a few different manufacturers out there that make float pods. I would buy these again, and I would highly recommend them. In addition to that, the plugs that are in these float pods are not plugs in a traditional sense. They're not kind of plugs that you would see in the bilge of a boat. They are inspection ports. These pods are in no way, shape, or form supposed to have water in them, and they are merely inspection ports that you can take them out and pressure test the system as I've done, and also do a visual inspection. You can stick a scope in there and look, make sure you're not getting any water intrusion, and make sure there's no degradation of the metal. In addition to that, these float pods are not designed to be positively charged, and what I mean by that is they will create some pressure on their own, just from the ambient air inside of them. As the heat of the day builds up, they will create some pressure. However, you know, for a short period of time when you're pressure testing, it's fine, but above and beyond what they create on their own, they should not be positively charged for any length of time. Now, I've had this discussion with some people on some pontoon boat forums, and some of the guys charge their pontoon boat tubes, and I'm not a big fan of that for a couple of reasons. I don't see any benefit of it to do that. In addition, I think it's detrimental in the long run, because you're now stressing the metal and you're stressing the welds, and they weren't really designed to do that. So that's pretty much it. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. There'll be more to come. I know I got a lot of stuff out there, a bunch of projects that aren't finished yet, but you know, you gotta pick and choose when you can work on it, and you have to prioritize. So anyway, again, thanks for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Y'all take care. Peace.